Okay, welcome back. This is the second video from our inclement weather day. Just going over the work and the things we would have done in class. Unit 2, Concept 7 is also one that I'm going to kind of leave to you to go on your own. I just want you to take note of certain milestones that are occurring during the fetal period development. So this is going to be our last and longest period of development. So it's going to go from 90 weeks till birth, so about 40 weeks, 41 for some of us, right? And so there are very specific things that are occurring along the way, and there is an excellent little depiction of what's kind of majorly happening at different stages that I just wanted you to look at and say, hey, wow, look, that's when that's coming into play. That's when this is coming into play. There's some great apps now for like women who are pregnant that will tell them along their way, hey, your baby is now this and this is what's going on. It's awesome. I think it's really important to know because when we're going to, like I said, in a second, move on to something else, and we're going to know that, hey, at this point in time, a teratogen being introduced is not going to be as damaging as, a later point in time. Or it may be more damaging at a later an earlier time than a later point in time. So take that picture at 2.11 and just kind of make note of the different milestones that they're talking about that occurs at each stage of development during the fetal period from 9 weeks to 40 weeks. That is on page 53 of your textbook. And that is what I will be judging the assignment off of. So please don't go off text. Okay. Unit 2, Concept 8 is what is a teratogen? And so I'll have students who hear this term for the first time and they're like, what is a teratogen? Teratogens are things you have heard of all your life. Okay, so they are environmental factors. That means they are external factors. So when it's an internal issue that causes a developmental change to an infant, right? That's going to be a genetic disorder type situation. When it is an environmental factor or an external item thing aspect that is can possibly cause defects and damage, that is called a teratogen. Okay, so we are lectured on these from a young age. These are so when we're looking at defining it, it's going to be any environmental or external factor that contributes to birth defects. Okay, and there are lots of them. And so let's go back over here because I think the next one is for you too. So after you define it in Concept 8, you're going to go over to Concept 9 and say what are 5 considerations that need to be taken into account when determining the type, and that should say amount of, not damage. Let's change that. It should say the amount of damage. I always hate doing this because I'm always going to find something. And the amount is what it should say, not off, of damage that might result from prenatal exposure to a specific teratogen. So common teratogens are in our book. These include things like the maternal diseases. There was a lot of concern with COVID-19 on what was going to be the impact to the infant if the mother contracted the disease. AIDS is certainly another big maternal disease that can cause issues. These can be things like pollutants. And so, what is that? Aaron Brockovich movie? If you saw that, or if you want to go back and see it, there was basically contaminated water. Right now, Flint, Michigan, has some contaminated water that's being linked to some defects or increase in defects in the population. And drugs, alcohol, different types of drugs, different type of alcohol. We have concerns over nitrates in meats and things like that. And so there are certain things that say, so does that mean that every woman who took a sip of beer is going to have a birth defect in their baby? No, right? No, certainly not. There are considerations that we have to take on the exposure of the infant to a teratogen. And then remember, the body is amazing and works in different ways. And there could be equal of all of these, and the babies would not be impacted equally. Why? We don't know. It could be genetic resilience, things like that. But 5 things that we consider on, are we going to be more concerned of the likelihood of a teratogen causing a defect? The first is the timing of the exposure. So that's what I was talking about, is a lot of times the mothers don't even know they're pregnant. They're 6, 7 weeks pregnant. We're forming that brain, and the major organs and things are beginning to take formation. And, they go on a couple binging episodes in college or what have you. That could be a critical period for when the formation was occurring. And so that's why it's recommended that you'll see the signs that say, or even think you're pregnant, because, that could cause issues, or cause, typically at that point in your body would get rid of the embryo, because something would have occurred that would have damaged the ability for it to fully form. But not always. So timing of exposure is critical. So, if you're having this illness, the mother gets extremely ill when the formation of the hands is occurring, you could see damage to the formation of the hands and the feet and all of that. So the example in our book says the ears and the arms reach out. They're critical about 6 weeks after conception. If the mother has exposed to certain substances during this period, the arms and ears might be malformed. So you can be better off having an exposure to certain things at a later point in the pregnancy, because some of these major things have already been formed and developed. So one is the timing, the when in the development of the fetus is the embryo and the fetus is this teratogen being exposed. Then is the amount of the exposure. So was it one bad night? Like one night of drinking, probably not some serious long-term damage, but was it consistent over time? So some substances, some of these teratogens are not as harmful until they reach a certain amount, or in a certain critical level that's going to really impact. We look at that with radiation. They're very cautious with mothers in regard to radiation for that point, but there is a critical limit for a fetus and embryo in regards to radiation and having damage. So the number of teratogens. So are you smoking and drinking and then got a serious, measles, chickenpox, scarlet fever, something like that, malaria, AIDS? If you have more teratogens present, then you're typically more likely to see an issue, because you're just throwing too much at the developmental process at the body to handle. And so having more factors that could damage puts you, of course, at more risk. Your genetic makeup is going to matter. So here it talks about that there is suggested by fraternal twins that were exposed to the same exact prenatal environment, but they don't have the same teratogenic effects. Why is that? Well, because they are not genetically identical. So remember, fraternal twins are not genetically identical. Twins are identical. And so they would have had the same experience because they were in the same environment in the uterus, but yet they do not have the same impact on the teratogen that caused the defect in one child, but perhaps not in another. Also, being male versus being female makes the experience different. Because the theory is, right? And so theories are what? We've talked about that already. And actually, some of you, I had you go back. It's that framework by which we study things. And so it's got research base and reasons that we believe in it, and support for it. And it gives us a framework by which to look. And the thought is that the Y chromosome just has fewer genes than the X, and therefore, because they're missing a whole leg, right? Just they may have an increased impact because there's just less to work with there. And so those are your 5. For this, you are supposed to write what are the 5 considerations when determining the type. So an amount of damage that might, the type and amount, and you're going to just list those 5 bolded things. They can just You can bold them. That's fine. Just those 5 things: the timing, the exposure, the amount, the number of teratogens, the genetics, and whether you're male or female. Okay. Gotta watch my time here. I'm about to run out again. I'm telling you, I get distracted. I love talking about some of this stuff. Oh, and I went all the way out. I'm gonna pause it and get myself to so I don't. Okay, sorry. In that pause, I realized that I have accidentally misnumbered, and it says Unit 2, Concept 2, Unit 2, Concept 2, and I actually ended up skipping over one of the questions. So you do need to answer both of those Concept 2s. I'm sorry that it's confusing. One links to SLO2, one links to SLO1. I'll fix that for future courses, but for this course, I'm just going to leave it as well so it doesn't confuse anyone who's already done it. But it's what's the difference between a genotype and a phenotype. And I skipped right over that piece, and I wanted to use this. Let me move things here a little. Great example to show you. I love this picture here. And it's genotype versus phenotype. And just to make it straight up simple, the genotype is going to be the genetic coding. It's like the actual code that's on your DNA and in the thing, and all the information that is found in your individual cell. It is the coding. The phenotype is the expression of the genotype. It is what does that coding look like in you. So what does it, and your phenotype is always going to be visible to other people and can easily be observed. Obviously, genotype, no, because you're not going to, I mean, I guess you could technically look in someone's cell and observe it, but it's not easily observed, right? So your genotype is that genetic code of inside you, in your person, in yourself. Your phenotype is the expression of your genotype, the visible expression of your genetics. And so I realized I had skipped over that. And does say down below the phenotype depends on the genotype, and additionally it can be influenced by environment and nutritional factors. But your phenotype is the physical expression or the expression of that. Okay, so we had jumped way up, and now we're jumping back down to where we were at. I apologize. Like, you know, me in class, I probably would have done the same thing, or one of you would have picked up that we skipped over that piece in question. And so back down to Unit 2, Concept 10, it's just to list and briefly describe. So give me a 1 to 2 sentence summary of each of the 4 categories of teratogens. So we have 4 basic categories of teratogens. The first one is physical teratogens. These are things that could physically impact a woman. Saunas, they list saunas, hot tubs, infections, things that would raise the pregnant woman's body temperature. So you always see like pregnant women stay out of hot tubs, right? And these can lead to things such as neural tube defects, spontaneous abortions, or cardiovascular issues. The second form is metabolic conditions affecting pregnant females. And so these are pieces that link to nutrition most often. So we want to keep, the reason we want to keep and get pregnant women those prenatal vitamins, because it's much cheaper for us to pay for prenatal vitamins for any pregnant woman than it is to deal with or to have to address the needs of a special needs child due to the fact that that woman was malnourished or wasn't receiving the correct nutrients when she was pregnant. So these are things like malnutrition. They will keep a close eye on diabetes. Gestational diabetes is a huge issue for many women, things like that. I gotta hurry up. Infections is the second one. So, you know, you want to make sure you're up on your immunizations. Rubella, herpes, syphilis, AIDS is a big issue. Or can be an issue. AIDS actually doesn't transfer to the infant, but it would have to be, if it transfers, it's usually transferred at birth because, you know, there's a lot of blood and mucus and bodily fluids being exchanged, but it doesn't go through the umbilical cord. And then drugs and chemicals are probably the ones that we know the biggest. These are things, radiation, you know, cocaine, we have crack babies, marijuana. That's not clear on what it is, but even caffeine, nicotine, Some of the natural herbs are bad for women. Okay, I'm gonna have to end because that is 15 minutes, but those are your 4 categories.